Good morning, Eddie.
Morning, mate.
Yesterday, the club announced Miguel Almiron had completed his move back to Atlanta United. What can you say about the player and the person that you've let go?
Yeah, very special player, very special person. He's going to be greatly missed by everyone connected with us. I think Miggy was what you saw. The perception of him was real. A very bubbly, bright personality. But I think behind the scenes, very, very professional, like ultra professional. He'd always be in, recovering, looking after himself, eating the right foods, doing everything he could to be at his very best every day. And I think you can't have enough, from my perspective, you can't have enough of those players that set the right standards in terms of behaviour. I thought he was a really good role model, behaved really well. So going to be greatly missed as a person and, of course, a player.
He gave you some great moments and some huge goals during your time as manager and prior to your arrival as well. Considering where you are now, how important are the efforts and the contributions of players like that in getting you to this point?
Yeah, I think you always look back with fondness of people that have given their all, really. And I think Miggy is one of those personalities and players that always gave his best in any moment, good and bad. And then he had ability. I mean, the goals he scored in that Champions League season will be remembered for a long time. I think the PSG goal naturally will get the attention, but there's loads during that season that propelled us to a brilliant season, the season before. And to see him score the goals that he did and get in the rhythm that he did and the vein of form where he looked like he was going to score every game. He played really well with the players around him. I remember great relationships with Sean and with Kieran. And special times.
January is a difficult month to do deals in, but how important for Newcastle was it to get a fair deal for him, given his age and his profile?
Yeah, of course. People are negotiating behind the scenes, and I think it's a deal that suits the club and suits Miggy. I think it's a good time for him to get a fresh challenge, and a club obviously that he knows very well, he's got a great relationship with, so I think he goes into very good hands the other way. But as I've said many times this month, it's a deal that we needed to do. It leaves us a little bit short in respect of that position that Miggy played and attacking areas currently, while Harvey's injured and Callum's injured. We're certainly stretched in that area, but it was a deal that we needed to do.
A few other Newcastle players have been linked with moves away this month. Do you expect any further outgoings before Monday night?
As we stand now, I currently don't. But yeah, things can change. But as we stand at the moment, I expect the squad to remain the same.
You mentioned Callum Wilson and Harvey Barnes. They're two players who are on their way back from injuries. Where are they in their respective recoveries? And is there any chance for this weekend?
No chance for this weekend. Callum is getting there. We have seen him in training this week, albeit in not the whole session, but parts of it, and he looked good. But no, the plan is not to involve him this week, but there's a chance for the games following. Harvey is a little bit behind. I think he's going to be probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Just a couple on the match this weekend. The table, firstly, is still really tight. If you win and other results go your way, you could be third, which I guess shows the opportunity that's there for you this weekend. How do you view the race for those top positions as it stands with 15 games to play?
I don't know. I've not really studied it in probably the length you have. I think when you're preparing the next game, it's always about just trying to maximise the match and knowing that the league table will always take care of itself. Of course, I've seen it and I know it's tight, and I know, as always, the next group of games are going to be important. As the games drop down and you lose, 15 doesn't sound a lot, and you get into the last 10 games, then it obviously every result takes on huge importance. We know we're in a run of games where we've been doing well, and we need to try and keep that going as long as we can.
And earlier in the season, Fulham beat you 3-1 at Craven Cottage, which was a tough day for you, but I suppose shows just what a good team they can be, so you'll be aware of the threats they carry.
Yeah, it was a tough day. We didn't perform anywhere near like we can, and we know that was a phase where we were struggling to reach our best form. But you know in the Premier League that every team has really strong qualities, and I think on the day Fulham played very well. I think they fully deserved to win. And we learned a lot of lessons from that game that we tried to take forward, and we're still trying to take forward and improve our game. Very good side, very good manager, very well coached.
Thanks, Reza. Keith?
Eddie, you said there that the Miggy sale was a deal that you needed to do. Does that mean you're in a position with just a couple of days of the window to go that you can't now go and add? Did you have to sell him with the inability to bring someone in? Yeah,
we knew this window, barring something huge happened that we didn't expect, would be a window that we didn't recruit in. I said that right from the outset, and despite being linked with numerous players, that's still the case. We're not actively looking to bring players in. But hopefully the squad's in a decent place. If we can get Callum and Harvey back fit and firing within a few weeks, I think the squad will look good.
Obviously they're not back yet, and it might take a few weeks to sort of bed them back in. Are there concerns on your part that you are a bit light in the forward areas? I mean, you look at right wing, you've only really now got Jacob Murphy as a specialist right winger, if you like.
Yes, it's probably not ideal for us in this moment to be light in that position, but it is what it is. And I've always said I've got no problem dealing with what I know and trying to make the best of the situation. So we'll look at solutions and players in different positions if we need to. That's my job, to try and find a solution if that happens.
You've got two big home games coming up in the next few days, and you said after the Bournemouth game a couple of weeks ago that the players looked fatigued due to the schedule. Does that mean that if there's any of that fatigue still around, does that mean that going into these two huge matches you might have to sort of mix things up at all in terms of your team selection?
I think the Bournemouth game is unique. I think we had played on a Wednesday night. We were kicking off at 12:30 on the Saturday. I just feel for that game we just hadn't recovered from the game beforehand, and then going into the Bournemouth. I think everyone could see that we were visually a little bit reactive in that game. But now we've had time since then. We've had 2-3 weeks. I don't see fatigue being an issue at all. We're desperate to play and very keen to play well. So no, I don't see that being an issue.
One of the positions you look very strong at the moment is in goals. You've got Nick Pope back, and he was on the bench last weekend. Martin's done brilliant in his absence. Have you got a decision to make now as to who is your number one moving forward in the short term?
Yeah, I understand the question and the intrigue into sort of trying to get me to name a number one. But I've always said, and even when Nick was playing regularly in goal, these things are always there to be changed by the performance of the players. You never really want to say, well, that's the player that plays in that position all the time. You want them to be challenged and asked questions by the players around them. So we've got healthy competition in there. We've got healthy competition in our back line. And hopefully that will serve us well.
Can I just throw a bit of a left field one at you, if you don't mind? We're asking all managers today on the back of the abuse that Michael Oliver and his family received. What do you make of referees and how they deal with these situations? I know you're one, and you've said a number of times in the past that on the touchline you try not to get involved in anything, you keep your thoughts to yourselves, but how important it is that managers, players and everyone involved in the game shows a good example so we don't see any incidents like what we've seen over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think it's vitally important, because I think, and I know from having children myself, that the younger generation look and copy behaviour. So I see it on a touchline on a Sunday all the time. You'll see what we do in the Premier League transferred to grassroots football, and I really feel for the referees in some situations who do it for the love of the game, really, and then they're getting abused. So I think we want to see all that kind of behaviour stamped out of the game. We want people to be able to enjoy the game in a friendly, safe environment, and I can't back that enough.
Thanks, Keith. Andy?
Morning, Eddie. We'll get the big question out of the way first. Who's replacing Miggy's smile in the dressing room? And is he one of those footballers that you've never seen anyone smile as much as he did throughout his career here at Newcastle?
Yeah, I don't think you can replace that smile easily. I think that's what everyone loved about Miggy. I think they could see his positivity. And as I said earlier, as a manager, when you're controlling or trying to manage 30 senior professionals and trying to produce a changing room that in the good times and the bad times always has a positive outlook. You can't have enough of those figures in there. So he's a big miss in that respect. Of course, he's a big miss as a player as well. But I think we've got some really good positive figures in that dressing room that will try and step up in his absence.
It might have got lost amongst the Miggy news, but again, nominations for Newcastle yourself as Manager of the Month, Alex Isak Player of the Month, Save of the Month, I think, for Martin Dubravka as well. Are you getting used to these nominations these days?
To be honest, I didn't even know until Lee told me a second ago, so that's what it has. I think the tunnel vision that I have in preparing a game, but I think, and I said to Lee on the way here, that if you're nominated for these things on a regular basis, hopefully it means you're having a good season.
Absolutely. We see it on the pitch. How often do you see it in training, this link-up between Jacob Murphy and Alexander Isak? And how often do you kind of work on that link-up or not?
I don't know whether you see those two players in isolation, sort of in training more than any other relationship. Yes, that they're producing goals for us, which is a great thing, and long may that continue for both players. But I think with the way that we work, we do work continually on our relationships in all areas of the team. And I'm a big believer in partnerships, and not just partnerships, but working in threes as well, to try and... Because I'm a big believer that if you can make your partner play better, you can help his career, you can help elevate him and the team. So the way we train is always based around that, and it's great to see two players having a really good link-up.
Just finally, the game against Fulham tomorrow, obviously first home game since that Bournemouth game a couple of weeks ago. Is there an attitude and a feeling amongst the squad of righting the wrongs from that day tomorrow?
Yeah, I think we definitely had that feeling going into the Southampton game. We knew that we needed a big response. I think the players gave that. But I do think that was an away game, and you're coming back to the same environment where we didn't perform, and we know we felt we let ourselves down in that moment for all the reasons that we've given before. So an opportunity to finally put that game to bed, I think.
Thanks, Andy. Nisha?
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
When you have the biggest game of the season just a few days after this really important Premier League game, how do you park that just to have this pure focus on Fulham? Or can you not? Do you have to think about potential fatigue in the squad?
It's weird. I don't look at it that way at all. I don't look at that we have the biggest game of the season ahead. As in the Arsenal game, the biggest game of the season for me, I know it's cliched, but is the game we have coming up, because it's the only one that we can affect and do something about. So the Fulham game's taking all our attention, every energy that we have. In the background, we will be preparing, of course, what we need to do against Arsenal, but that can wait for the outcome of this game. So all energy, all focus purely on Fulham.
You said that you always knew, bar something extraordinary, that this wouldn't be a window you recruit in. Has it been quite refreshing, perhaps, not to have a phone ringing all the time through January?
It's still been ringing, but it's been ringing the other way. So no, it's not been, as I said many times, it's not been totally inactive for us. But I think there's been a general consensus that we're not actively looking for players. But as I said many times, we still need a knowledge of players. You still need to build that, of course, for future reference. I imagine it's been quite frustrating for you guys, because that's a big part of what you want to know, and I've sort of slammed the door shut at every turn. But that's because, yeah, as I said, we've not really been looking.
Marco Silva said in his press conference that, Fulham are hard to beat. They aren't going to change their approach going into this game. You touched on it before, kind of putting the wrongs right against Bournemouth. I guess, how difficult are you expecting it to be, and what difference could being at home make?
Yeah, I think when you play Fulham, I think every game we've had against Fulham, and they've been good games, and you can see their qualities, and you can see Marco's qualities in his team as well. I think very good football team. They're very brave in every aspect. So they're brave with the ball, they're brave without the ball, and they've got some very good players. I think their recruitment last summer was very strong. I think they added some players that made them generally, their team and their squad, more competitive. And we found to our cost against them, that strength sort of shone through in that game against us. I thought they were very impressive. So We never underestimate Fulham, and we never underestimate any opponent, but we know this will be a tough game.
Thanks, Nisha. I'll go to Ian, Louise, and then Lee.
Good morning, Eddie. Have Newcastle benefited from not playing European football this season?
Are you alluding to injuries? Are you talking here, or just generally?
Just the schedule and the fact that last season, that fatigue became a factor.
Yeah, I think fatigue became a factor because of the number of injuries we had, and I think if you're linking it to injuries, our injury record's been much better this year, possibly. And I said this before, due to the schedule last year was intense for us, and once we had a few injuries, we were chasing in a negative way. We could never get the balance right, and then we're having to play players continually, the same players over and over and over again every 2-3 days, and that's never easy. So in that respect, yes, but I think in some respects, no. We want the competition, we want the games. I really, really enjoyed last year, although it was challenging. I really enjoyed everything about it. So I think it's a double-edged sword for us. We'd definitely want it again if we could.
And on a similar theme, Eddie, does this season have a similar feel to 2 years ago when you didn't have European football? You got through the semi-finals of the Carabao, and you were challenging for Champions League places.
In some senses, yes. Definitely, I can see parallels there. I think there's been difficult moments. There were difficult moments in the Champions League season, but ultimately we won on some great runs of victories that propelled us up the league. Did well in the cup competitions. And there's a slightly different feeling, whereas that season there was just huge excitement and optimism, and everything was new. I think now everything's a lot more level, which in some respects is good, in a sense that I don't think there's this huge sort of unknown for us. I think we're going into a period where we know and understand it a lot better than we did that year, and I hope we can use that to our advantage as we go to the end of the season.
Thanks, Ian. Louise?
Morning, Eddie. I'm just wondering, is industrial espionage, particularly with drones, a problem in football? People spying on training. I was just looking at the Bev Priestman case in Canada. I don't know if you're familiar with it. She was a super talented coach. She was Phil Neville's assistant with England Women, led Canada to Olympic gold in Tokyo. And then last summer's Olympics, Canada were caught spying on opponents. She's now serving a 1-year worldwide ban from football. But I went through email exchanges which had been released with analysts that she was trying to employ. And one of them was sort of saying, spying's not moral. And she was kind of saying this actually is standard in men's and women's football and national associations clubs. And then, of course, I remember being at the Leeds game with Marcelo Bielsa and Frank Lampard when a rather more rudimentary form of spying, i.e. a man trying to hide in a tree, had been uncovered by Frank Lampard, who went mad, and Bielsa, was puzzled because this was standard in South America, etc. But I just wondered, with drones now and technology, is it something that you actively have to guard against, or do you not think about it? Or
I don't give it a second thought, to be honest. I think we're quite isolated here to a degree. I think if we were in a different part of the world, it might be a little bit more relevant. But I think for us, yes, we use drones. We use drones to film our training. Don't think we've had an issue with any drones flying over from somewhere else to potentially spy on us. And even if they did, I don't think they'd quite understand what we're doing anyway. So I think it would be irrelevant.
so there's no anti-aircraft missiles around the training ground?
There's no plans. If we need to, obviously I'll look at it.
And finally, obviously Bev Priestman, who seemed to be going right to the top in the women's game. Phil Neville said she could easily coach men. She was top talent. Does she deserve to be given a second chance? Bielsa, it was just, he sailed on and people kind of looked rather affectionately on it. Is that a double standard, or is it so serious that she's finished?
I don't know enough about it, to be honest, to give an opinion of any clarity to go one way or the other. First I'm hearing about it is your assessment of it, so I'll leave that to someone else.
Thanks, Louise. Just a reminder on time, hopefully. Shorter questions. We'll go to the league.
Yeah, Eddie, on going back to what you said when you said you needed to do a deal with the Miggy thing, is it now pretty much a given that the summer window you will have access to funds and you will be able to make cash signings?
Do you know what, Lee? I think that's a question for another day. I don't. We haven't sat down and had those conversations and sort of a clear picture of our financial situation. Obviously, we did in preparation for this window, but everything has been quite short term, and quite rightly, because our focus is on what we can and can't do this window and what we need to do, and then obviously the summer window will look differently, no doubt. But in terms of sort of the details of that, I've got no idea at the minute.
Just to clarify, when you say you needed to do the deal, because obviously you're going to be a player down now if you can't bring anyone in, so can you just elaborate on why you needed to do it?
PSR related.
Right.
Yep, PSR related. That's why we needed to do it.
And just on Jacob Murphy, obviously he's in fantastic form. Whether he's in the England conversation or not, I don't know. But do you think he deserves to be in contention for a call up, given he's been in the under-21s before, and based on form players in the Premier League, he is definitely one of them at the minute.
I think Thomas will no doubt be looking closely at all our players that qualify to play for England. I think he's been at a number of games. So yeah, I mean, Jacob's in good form. My message to him is to just continue in the vein that he has been. He's been creating a lot of goals, creating a lot of chances for the teams. Also could have scored more himself. He's been unlucky a few times. So great character, great lad. I really wish him well and hope he can carry on where he's left off.
Thanks, Lee. We'll go to Craig, then Scott and Chris.
Morning, Eddie. You've had a free week this week, which was good in terms of preparation and fatigue, but the elephant in the room midweek was perhaps all of the noise around the Champions League. You guys weren't part of that final match day. Your top players, however many fall into that bracket, have given you one season outside the Champions League. Will they give you two, do you think? Is it as simple as you need the Champions League next season to keep some of those names at the club?
I don't know. I don't see it quite like you see it, and have bracketed the question there. I think that those players that you're talking about, I think, need to perform to sort of confirm that they want to play there. They want to play there with us. That's got to be the aim and the ambition, not looking elsewhere. The determination and resolve within the squad I've seen in recent weeks has been very, very strong. I think we've been hugely motivated. We've put a great run together. We've put ourselves in a great position. But I think this is the important part of the season now. We're coming down to the games where we need to try and keep winning. We need to keep the run of form. We need to stay in and around where we are and really push. So my message to them is to focus on that.
And just on that, all the noise around the Champions League this week, and I dare say you watched the games, did it bring home that is where you need to be, that is where you want to be?
Definitely. I think when you look at those games as from the outside, and you're having a totally different experience when you're the outside looking at the games as to when you're in it. Obviously, when you're in it, it's so fast paced. You're going from game to game to game. It's a great thing to be part of. We're desperate to get back there, and we'd love to as a whole squad.
Chris?
Morning, Eddie. In terms of, you said last week that ideally you would like to be signing at least one player per window, and you said that maybe there can be a staleness and you need a freshness to the squad. How have you gone about trying to avoid that, knowing that you said that it was unlikely you were going to make a signing this window? How have you gone about trying to prevent that staleness from creeping in?
Well, I think to a degree, internally that can sort of serve itself. I think when you get players back from injury, they are like new signings. So when Sven came back, that was a huge lift. Hopefully, touch wood, we've got Callum and Harvey not too far away. Jamal Lascelles a bit further back, but not too far away. They can be like new signings, because when you're training as intensely as we do, you're separated from the injured players. There's nothing you can do about that, and suddenly new energy comes back into the squad. So I think that's how I've tried to look at a couple of players returning. Big personalities can give you that boost. to be honest, there's no other way that you can fabricate that. I don't think I can magic up a new personality. Sometimes with young players coming up, if they do well, they can bring an energy and a freshness to the group. But beyond that, there's not a lot else you can do.
And just another one on Jacob Murphy. I mean, you've previously, Miguel Almiron was largely the first choice right winger for a period. Jacob Murphy has sort of come from behind in terms of that position within the squad and really cemented that position over the course of the last few months. How difficult is it for a player to do that, and how impressive have you been by him doing that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think two players fighting for the same position, and we've got that a lot within the squad at the moment, is a great thing, and I think it's up for debate. You know, everyone goes, "Oh, what's your strongest team?" And you must know your strongest team. And I always say it's always in a state of flux because you never quite know. Form is a temporary thing, and you really do want players to show their best form and their best moment to challenge the person that's got the shirt, and then that can easily change to them owning the shirt, and then you want a really good response from the other player. And I think that's a really good team working, or a really good squad working together to benefit each other. So yeah, Miggy and Jacob, they fought for the shirt. They shared minutes together. Miggy went on a really good run of form, in part because Murph, I think, was breathing down his neck. He was fighting for the place. And then it sort of switched the other way this year to Jacob nailing the shirt down and keeping his place, and Miggy fighting and training very well, I have to say, to keep Murph very much where he needed to be in terms of his performances. So now we're going to have to find another solution on the right there. We're going to have to look at different ways that we can offer support and competition for Jacob.
Okay, we'll try and squeeze as many questions as we can in the last few minutes. We'll start with Scott and we'll go to Tom.
Hi, Eddie. When you say you don't expect anyone else to leave, does that mean in your mind the Martin Dubravka situation is completely put to bed now? He stays beyond the end of the month. And if so, has Martin sought any assurances about what his longer-term future might look like, or have there been any contract discussions there?
Yeah, Martin won't leave. Yeah, we're in discussions with Martin about a new contract. I think I said that a few weeks ago. Hopefully there'll be a swift conclusion there. No, he's not sought any sort of certainties on his place or anything beyond, just trying to stay in the team and do well.
And then just another player beyond January, Will Asula. There's almost certainly going to be a lot of interest in him, loan deals, things like that. Is that a bit of a double-edged sword? Because potentially could benefit from playing regular football. He hasn't really had that, but you might need him, and there probably is a benefit for him to continue training within your first team group. Where do you see that balance?
Yeah, I see that balance very firmly at the moment, and that he needs to be here with us. He needs the training with us. He needs the understanding. He needs the development that we're trying to give him. Will is a multi-talented player as well. I don't see him just being a pure number 9. He has played wide before, so that is an option that we could look at. I think he's doing well. He's on track. He is developing. Obviously, he's looking at him as a striker. He's competing with Alex for a place, which isn't something you necessarily want to be doing at the minute with Alex's form. But in some senses, and I said this to Will when he signed, he's learning off two of the best strikers that he could possibly work with currently, and he needs to absorb as much information from both Alex and Callum. Two great role models for him to help him in his development. So no, very much here at the moment, and of course beyond this season we'll try and take the next steps that benefit Will and us.
Thanks, Scott. We'll go to Dom, then to Rebecca.
Morning, Eddie. Just to follow up on Chris's question about Jacob Murphy, Miguel Almiron, who do you view as your most natural alternative to Jacob Murphy in your side now Miguel Almiron's no longer there?
No one currently. I think we'll have to. I don't think there is a natural player. I mean, we'll look at a few different options. Joe Linton's played wide for us this season. As I say, Will Asula could possibly. We'll have a look at that. But I don't think we have a huge queue of players that are naturally wouldn't necessarily excel playing on the right. But we'll have to find a solution, of course. And as I say, we need support for Jacob. Jacob's not going to be able to play every minute of every game. And we also need to push him. So we'll look also at the academy, and if there's anyone in there that deserves an opportunity. So we'll look at all options.
Thanks, Tom. Rebecca.
Morning, Eddie. I just wanted to go back to the question before about kind of does this season have parallels with a couple of seasons ago? Do you feel like you're sort of better equipped as a manager in kind of managing the expectations for this kind of crucial sort of 4 or 5 month period with Carabao Cup, Premier League, and obviously doing well in the league, and Champions League potentially being on the horizon?
Well, I think with every experience you have, whether good or bad, you hopefully improve from it if you analyse it properly. So I'd like to think season upon season you build that bank of knowledge and potentially can help your players in different ways. I'd like to think so. The reality is you never quite know. I try and push myself every day to be there for my players in any way that I can be.
Thank you. Kieran?
Morning. It's a very obvious question. Will you have to sign a right winger in the summer, having lost one? And do you think the groundwork you've done this month, the research, the talks you've had can benefit you going forward in the summer?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I mean, unless someone comes from the blind side and surprises us in that position, I'd imagine that we would possibly look to sign someone in that position. But I always say there's no guarantees with anything. But the natural feeling would be that we'd need a replacement for Miggy eventually.
And finally, there've been some big bids coming from the Saudi Pro League that clubs have had elsewhere. There was maybe a perception that Newcastle would benefit from that partnership. It's not really proved the case. Has that made you smile a bit?
I'm not sure smile is the right word. But yeah, I looked on with interest really at the Saudi League, because initially there was a huge outlay of transfer fees and wages for players from England. That seemed to really settle down last summer. There was minimal activity. I mean, there was a few, but minimal compared to the summer before. And now there's sort of selective players that are moving there, and it's interesting to see how that league develops. But yeah, we haven't been the beneficiary of many bids yet.